What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Big Time Football Talk. So I wanted to break down the top cornerbacks for the 2022 NFL Draft. This class is absolutely loaded at the cornerback position. This is kind of similar to like the wide receiver class the last 2 years of the NFL Draft. This class is just absolutely loaded with talent. And I can't wait to talk about a lot of these guys. I'm just going to give you the top six, but I'll give you guys some other notable ones to watch out for because this class is the real deal. And I'm just so excited. There's just a lot of really talented players. So let's get straight to it. Number 6 from Washington at 5'11", 194 is Trent McDuffie. He's number 22 for the Huskies. The strength of McDuffie is he's very fluid when he turns into zone coverage. He has a very quick back pedal. He's a pretty good tackler, takes angles. I'll rephrase that. Not a good tackler. He's a great tackler. Probably the best tackler at corner in this in this draft class. And he's a very quick twitch guy. The only problem with Trent McDuffie is he doesn't have like elite speed. He has pretty good speed. Like I think he'll probably run in the low 4.5s, which is not a huge concern, but it's a concern as far as can he develop into one of the best corners in the NFL. That's why some people have him higher on their board than me. But that's very concerning because you really want a corner running in the low 4.4s, 4.3s, to cover some of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL. And one thing I wrote, he needs to work on turning his head a little bit, and not always trusted one-on-one on an island. He's capable of doing it, and he's faced some pretty good receivers in the Pac-12. But that wasn't a super. Is not necessarily a strength of it, and he can work on his ball skills a little bit. He's pretty good at breaking up passes when the ball's in the air and going up and getting it. But there's some other guys that are a little bit better at that I'll touch on later. But Trent McDuffie is just a really good football player, and he's very consistent. It seems like every game he's making a key forced fumble or a key tackle or a big time interception. And, he's got a pretty compact frame at 194, pretty solid build, and pretty strong upper and lower body. And, he is likely the best zone coverage guy in this draft as far as corner goes. And, there's a lot to like about McDuffie. And, if you're a team that you need a zone corner who, comes up and makes hits and makes good tackles and can force fumbles, then McDuffie's your guy. I just think with the lacking elite speed, that's what's holding him back from being a first round talent. But he's nonetheless he's a tremendous football player in Washington. Is coached up those defensive backs super well over there, and has a chance to be a very good football player at the next level. I just worry about him as far as it goes on an island, and that's something that Chris Sims really reiterated on his podcast. If you're going to take a guy first round, top 10, even top 3 like Okudah and some of these corners that have went top 5, top 3, Patrick Peterson, you really need to see the guy, play one-on-one on an island and, have elite speed to recover and, come back to the ball. But so that's why McDuffie comes in at number 6 on my list. But, nonetheless, there's a lot to like about the kid. I'm just going to flip here to my next guy. Next, I have Kaiir Elam from Florida, and I was kind of torn as where to rank Kaiir Elam because there is a lot to love or a lot to like. Some things to love for the most part about Kaiir Elam. His first thing is 6'2", 194. He's got the size you're looking for in a corner. He's got good length. Florida trusts him to play one-on-one in an island press man-to-man for the most part. And he's good at turning his head around, staying in the wide receiver's hip pocket, and making plays in the football. That's one thing that I did love about Kaiir Elam. He does make plays in the football, does jar the ball loose, goes and high points it when it's in the air. That's something, that's Pro Football Focus touched on as key to the success of a corner, translating the NFL. Can they turn around and, go and get pass breakups? Pass breakups to me are very important. That's what I liked about, Elam and some other guys. Interceptions are great, but sometimes, just getting that safe pass breakup is key because, that makes it, that makes it go from, 2nd to 10, even, instead of, a big first down that's a 30-yard gain, because it's kind of one of those things. Would you rather have, risk going for, the interception, give up a 30-yard gain, or would you rather, get the safe pass breakup and it's 2nd and 10? I know a lot more coaches are emphasizing take the ball away in the NFL, but sometimes you got to really appreciate that nice pass breakup that gets it to 2nd and 10 and 3rd and 10. So that's where, Kaiir Elam excels. So. And then I wrote, does not give up a lot of big plays. He's a pretty good tackler. He's definitely willing and not afraid to, come up, but he could take better angles and, come up lower and, tackle. And the one thing, he doesn't always look super natural when he's flipping into zone coverage. So, his zone coverage could get better, but I think that's, zone coverage is something that you can, coach a guy up, and he's got enough natural ability to, get better at that in the National Football League. But, he really burst onto the scene as a freshman against Virginia, made some plays in that Orange Bowl. And then last year, going against some pretty good wide receivers in the SEC, did a fine job. So it's just really the speed thing for me, and his hips not being as fluid as I want him to. That's why Kaiir Elam's lower on this list. But the national media will feed you all the key strengths for Elam, and that's a lot of these national media outlets have him higher on his list because of the physicality and his such high grade and pass coverage. But you got to really look at the natural or the weaknesses in his raw athletic ability. He's not going to run 4.3s. I think even mid 4.4s would be a stretch. I think mid 4.4s would be a huge win if that's what he runs at the combine, or if that's what he runs at the pro day or whatever time. But you can't. Guys naturally having the hip fluidity and the natural 4.3, low 4.4 speed is is something that you can't coach, and it's critical to the cornerback position. But so Elam comes in at number 5. At number 4. See, these next 4 guys, all of these these next 3 guys, 2 through 4, all these guys have a great case at the number 2 spot. Some could even challenge the number 1, who most people have as their consensus number 1, who's a tremendous football player. But these other guys are these next 2 through 4 are just tremendous football players, and I all have these top 4 as first rounders. And starting with number 4, at 5'11", 183, that's Mykael Wright. He's number 2 for Oregon. Enters only his true junior year in 2020. Mykael Wright is there's a lot I could go on and just talk about Mykael Wright, but here I'll just touch on with some things that I absolutely love about him. First off, he's a competitor. He's fearless, very quick, tremendous speed. We're talking about legit 4.3 speed. I mean, this is a guy that gets involved in the kick return game and, just is explosive. Not only can he, make big returns on kick return, he can take it to the house. I'm talking, 80, 90-yard returns that he's had. The one coming against USC was phenomenal, really turned on the Jets. And, he's great in both zone coverage and man. He flips his hips and turns, very well in zone coverage. He's a super smooth strider, good at, putting his foot in the ground and coming back to the ball. Made an incredible play versus Iowa State where he was in zone coverage, turned around and, got his hand up and jarred the ball loose from the receiver, running, turning around and going and separating it from his hands. And the guy just does not allow separation. And you can tell that other teams really respect his coverage ability and have done their homework and watched film because they just do not test the guy. I watched the UCLA game and a few other games. They just do not throw the ball at the kid. And USC, last year in the Pac-12 championship game where he gave up some catches. That was a game that was, he was playing way off, and they were allowing, USC to make those underneath catches. That's about the only time he was giving up, catches, and occasionally has got beat, one-on-one. But, when I say get beat, the receiver goes up and gets it. He's right there in the hip pocket to make a play. Against Stanford, he went against Simi Fehoko. Fehoko had like one catch on him. The other times they tested him, and it was just nothing. He was just completely locked down in position, swatted the ball away. I mean, that was Stanford. Stanford was early on in the season, and I think other teams learned from that game. Just do not test Mykael Wright because he really wasn't thrown at a lot after that, and I think that's why people aren't really talking about him because teams just do not throw the ball at him anymore. But you watch the games where they did throw at him, and even he did get a couple. They did get a couple catches on him, and that's, people will say, oh, well, look, he just got a big gain on Mykael Wright. But, yeah, look, he's right there. His hand was up, and, he was just as, he was in, great position to make a play. It just, sometimes, they're going against tremendous Division I receivers. You're gonna get got occasionally, but he wins more often than he loses one-on-one, man-to-man, which is super impressive to me. And that's, like these next few guys I'm talking about, that's what separates them from, these other Elam and McDuffie, with all due respect. This is just the ability to, win one-on-one more often than not when you're going against an elite receiver. And, I watched the USC game, and he's going against Tyler Vaughns. They bring him in off the bench. They go after him, and he's right there against Vaughns. And, just stride for stride, the ball sails out of bounds, incompletion. A few plays later, they go back at him. It looks like Vaughns had it. He gets his hand up there because his hand's always in position. And eventually, with little fighting and getting physical with Vaughn as he goes to the ground, the ball pops loose. And just awesome to see. And the other thing, Mykael Wright is just a fierce tackler. I think he might have been the highest graded highest graded tackler by Pro Football Focus. Just does a great job of coming up aggressively and tackling low and finishing the tackle, getting the guy on the ground. But I was just a little. They don't always have him on an island. I don't know if that's just kind of the coaching staff just choosing to. They just want to play a little more off man to man and a little bit off in zone. But he's definitely capable of that, and could bulk up a little bit. It has a little bit of a thin frame, but there's just Mykael Wright. After when I come back to and talk about cornerback rankings, he's easily could be my number 2, if not my number 1, if he has another big year this year. That's how much I think about Mykael Wright, and he was kind of a surprise to me. I knew he was a very talented corner. Knew he was a 5-star recruit, but when you turn on the tape, he just wowed me away, and I absolutely love Mykael Wright. So he's tremendous. I'll get to my number 3 guy. Just my notes are kind of spread out. But, number 3 is Derion Kendrick. And Kendrick I have higher than a lot of people, but would you watch Derion Kendrick? It kind of goes along with Mykael Wright. He just is always put on an island one-on-one, and Derion Kendrick probably has the best hips of any corner. His hip fluidity is just ridiculously good. This guy can just effortlessly turn left, turn right, stay stride for side with the receiver. He has very good speed. I think he'll probably run in the low 4.4s, which is, definitely fast enough to compete with, some of the fastest in the NFL. I don't think he'll have the 4.3 speed, but his speed is very good. And in the North Carolina game, he was left on an island and just did a tremendous job. Didn't really give up any big plays. And, like Mykael Wright, he's always in position to make a play on the football. And, it was one of those things like Chris Sims talked about. Clemson, with A.J. Terrell and some of these top corners that over the last couple of years, it's you see how much the coaching staff trusts him. You say, hey, you go get that guy. You stay man-to-man with that guy, and you lock him down one-on-one, man-to-man on an island. And that's something that Derion Kendrick is tremendous at. Not an aggressive tackler. That might be the biggest knock on Kendrick. And, I don't value tackling like I used to at the cornerback position, but I think it's something interesting to keep in mind because, with the NFL and the screen game, and you got to be able to make tackles in space. So hopefully he'll start to come up more aggressively on tackles, because you saw the Notre Dame game, they really started to run at him because they knew he was not going to come up and physically try to take on a block or tackle the running back. So something to keep in mind. But Kendrick has played a lot of good football. He was a quarterback coming out of high school. He's a tremendous athlete, and played super well in the 2019 Ohio State game, and where he was thrown at the whole game. Garrett Wilson had a big catch on him, but he was right in position. Even when guys do make catches on him, he's right there in position to make a play. And he's made interceptions. He's always been around the football. He's recovered fumbles. Had a terrible game this year against Ohio State, but it was one of those things that Olave and Wilson had some catches on him, but was stride for stride, ready to make a play. And when you're on an island against receivers like that, you're going to get got once in a while. So really like Derion Kendrick, transfers over to Georgia this year, should make an immediate impact, and should have a phenomenal year, and is definitely a first round talent. Has had some off the field issues, but I'm really just going off by what I've seen on the field. So, but with that top-notch hip fluidity and the great speed and athleticism, Kendrick comes in at number 3 for me. Now, this next guy is another guy like Mykael Wright. I can't believe more people aren't hyping up, and that is Roger McCreary. He's number 23 for Auburn. McCreary is just unbelievable. They leave him on an island, man-to-man, against the best receiver for most of the game. I watch him go one-on-one with George Pickens, and people will watch that game and say, oh, well, George Pickens gets a touchdown right here on McCreary. But McCreary's right there. And you saw later on in that game, he had shut down Pickens just about every other play. Had a great pass breakup on him in the end zone. And it wasn't just that game against Pickens. You watch the LSU game in 2019, they put him on an island one-on-one with Jamar Chase, and he was giving Jamar Chase a lot of fits. I mean, Chase did have one big catch, or a couple big catches on him, but he was right there with Jamar Chase the whole game, really making life hard on him to get open. And McCreary, he makes plays in the football, has tremendous hands to make interceptions, had a long interception return against Kentucky that should have stood, but one of his teammates targeted another player, so it was taken off the board. Had a great pick in the end zone against Ole Miss this last year, and he seems to just be teams like Mykael Wright and Kendrick. Teams just do not want to throw his way. They've really done their homework and read their scouting reports. So, it's one of those things, McCreary might not have, all the gaudy numbers as far as pass breakups and interceptions, but, you got to trust what the teams and the coaches are doing. If teams don't throw at him, and if coaches trust him man-to-man to cover, Devontae Smith, George Pickens, and Racey McMath, who's blazing fast from LSU, Jamar Chase, and all these stud receivers that McCreary's went against man-to-man for the whole game, then he's a pretty darn good talent. And McCreary also makes plays as far as tackles. Is not always a sure tackle, but he's definitely willing to come up and make hits, and he's not afraid to get in the backfield. Also a pretty good blitzer. And he doesn't play a lot of good zone doesn't play a lot of zone coverage, but definitely should be able to be coached up and mix in some zone coverage in the NFL. But if that's even necessary, I mean, with his type of speed, I think he probably runs in the low 4.4s. I don't know about it. Could be high 4.3s. He does have some good speed, but I absolutely love Roger McCreary because Maybe it is 4-3 because he was right there with. They put him against Racy McMath. McMath, not a great receiver as far as production at LSU, but he was a true 4-3 guy. That's why it was a pretty good matchup. Putting McCreary on him instead of Terrence Marshall was LSU's best receiver this past year, but McMath was a 4-3 guy, so that's why they matched up McCreary on him. But so. Yeah, McCreary, I can't believe he's not getting more hype. I'm so glad that I've watched tape on him. I watched 13 total defensive backs, and, Roger McCreary was, like that guy with Mykael Wright that's like, why is no one have this guy higher on his list? It just baffles me. You saw against Mississippi State, they didn't throw at him, and they finally threw one up in the air, and McCreary comes down with it. Maybe, one of the only weaknesses is does get a little too physical. It gets called, for pass interference occasionally, not a lot. But I love what McCreary brings to the table. He's a very talented guy, and just going against some of the top-notch wide receivers in the SEC week in and week out. And teams just don't really throw the ball at him. Had a hard time for. Gave up a big play against Devontae Smith, but he was left one-on-one in the slot, and then also gave up a touchdown, but that was on a play action. He kind of got sucked in, playing some zone. No receiver was on that side, so that was the only downside of the Alabama game, this year. But that was against Devontae Smith, so you got to give him a pass. You're gonna get got by Devontae Smith once in a while. Devontae Smith is so hard to cover man to man. So that's why Roger McCreary comes in at number 2, and I absolutely love that guy, Roger McCreary from Auburn. Number one comes with no surprise. It's Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU, 6'1", 194. And like the last 3 guys I talked about, there's a lot to love about Derek Stingley Jr. Great speed, may have true 4.3 speed. That's what he ran in high school. It was one of those hand times, so you're not really sure as far as what that would be as far as a laser time, but it's likely that usually guys get faster in college, so likely it's a true 4.3. That's what it looks like when he's running on tape. Also, tremendous fluid hips, long stride, covers a lot of ground. He's got good length. Dominant freshman year in 2019, first team All-American as a true freshman. Faced C.D. Lamb, Seth Williams, Devontae Smith, George Pickens, all as a freshman, and really locked down Pickens. What was it? Had 2 interceptions versus Georgia in the SEC title game. So the bottom line, Stingley he's everything you want in a corner. I mean, people talked he would have been the first corner off the board in maybe these last 2 drafts. Just great feet, effortlessly puts foot in the ground, just always stride for stride. Didn't have the best year in 2020, but I say not the best year compared to what he did in 2019. He was just right there with every wide receiver. And like the last 3 guys, trusted on an island. They say, hey, Stingley, you go cover the best receiver the other team's got, and you just stick with them the whole game. Has no problem doing it. Doesn't give up on plays. Doesn't get rattled. Is quite the competitor. And never gets outclassed. Even if he gives up a big play like that did happen against Devontae Smith in the Iron Bowl in 2019, he came right back and kept competing. And I remember the Florida game in 2019, he was picked on all night, gave up some catches, was right there, wasn't really just outclassed by anyone, but, gave up some catches on some slant routes and some curls or whatever, some underneath stuff, but then came back with a late game interception to, help seal the victory for LSU. So, but Derek Stingley, he's been the man since high school. Number 2 recruit, according to 24/7, just behind Thibodeau. And he's a ball player, tremendous athlete. I could maybe, might have the best hips, right there, with McDuffie and Kendrick. Some of the top hips as far as corner in this class. Is a pretty good tackler. He's not super aggressive in that aspect, but he's definitely willing and can get guys on the ground. So, had the medical issue this year. I'm not sure exactly what that was all about, but it caused him to miss the opening game against Mississippi State. But yeah, Stingley likely should have a better year than last year, and should have, if he has a year like he does his freshman year with his talent, he should be the number one corner off the board. Some people have him going, could be the number 2 pick overall in next year's draft. He's that type of talent. It's him, Thibodeau, and a couple other guys as far as the best non-cornerback talent in the draft for 2022. So, Derek Stingley comes in at number 1. So, yeah, a few other guys. You may be wondering, where's Ahmad Gardner? Ahmad Gardner's physical and all that, and I like his talent and his ability to cover press man to man and out physical wide receivers. But the guy's just not super fluid as far as hip wise, and his speed is just not great. He's really a guy that's going to get exposed when he goes against faster receivers, in my opinion. And didn't really face, with all due respect to American Athletic, didn't really face any top-notch receivers. Didn't go against Reggie Roberson for SMU. Roberson was hurt before that game. And then did not go against George Pickens, missed the bowl game with an injury. So I was just dying to see him against the top-notch receivers, see how his physicality matched up. But the lacking speed is concerning. So no Ahmad Gardner, no Sevyn Banks. I really do like Sevyn Banks a lot. He is just he has got size, and he is a built dude. He is pretty rocked up and has a very strong lower body. He's a physical tackler, but he's not as good, man to man as I want him to be. But very good all around player, Sevyn Banks. And then Alontae Taylor, Tennessee. He's a guy that was kind of the next guy in this list. Alontae Taylor's played a lot of good football. Former wide receiver from he's a number 2 for Tennessee. Good size, good length. He's very competitive. Quick back pedal, but yeah, he's still a little bit raw. You can tell he hasn't played. Well, at this point, he's played a good amount of corner, but you can still tell there's some room for improvement. But yeah, he's made some big plays, but McDuffie and Elam a little bit more refined as far as corner. That's why he was kind of Alontae Taylor would probably be my number 7 on this list. But yeah, just I did about 13 guys. You could talk. There's some other guys. Isaac Taylor Stewart from SC. I'll just name a few other guys I like. Travius Hodges Tomlinson from TCU. A little bit undersized, but super competitive. Could be a pretty good slot corner in the National Football League. Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson. That's another guy people are high on. But the thing with Booth is very competitive, and he's a tenacious player. He really competes for the ball. The only problem with Andrew Booth is, his movements aren't always super fluid. It looks like he has to really work to, try to move. And, the top guys I have they're effortlessly can move and get in position in zone coverage. Booth really has to push hard off that foot and exert a lot of effort to try to get in position. And he doesn't have, burning elite speed. Like, I think he's probably a mid 4.5 or mid 4.4 to 4.5 guy. So that was just the concern I had with Booth Jr. But very good football player. All these guys are, all these top 13 corners I watch, all could have, all of them could go no later than second round. It's, serious talent. I mean, Tawan Mullen from Indiana. So a lot of good football players. But I'm going to wrap with that. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, to this episode of Big Time Football Talk. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.